Imagine pouring your heart into a dream only to watch it crumble before your eyes. Not because of your skills or your drive, but because of the color of your skin. In a world that claims equality, some battles are still fought in silence, where prejudice whispers louder than merit. What happens when your very identity becomes a barrier? When you're denied not for who you are, but for how they see you? This isn't just a story, it's a reality too many still face. And it starts with one woman's fight to reclaim everything that was taken from her. If you believe in stories that matter, don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey. Let's start. Lena stepped into Seraphix's gleaming boardroom, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor. The room was immaculate. Sleek glass walls stretched toward the sky, reflecting the city below. The sharp angles and pristine surfaces seemed to scream perfection, a place where only the best belonged. She stood tall, her natural curls bouncing slightly as she walked with quiet confidence. She could feel the weight of the interview ahead, but she was ready. Her resume was flawless, her experience undeniable. She had worked too hard to be here, and today she was going to claim what was rightfully hers. Her portfolio, black and sturdy, rested firmly in her hands. Every accomplishment, every achievement she had worked so tirelessly for was contained within. This was the moment. "Miss Thorne," the assistant called, breaking her thoughts. "This way." Lena nodded, adjusting her bag as she followed. The assistant down the long corridor, past walls adorned with the glossy faces of Seraphix's celebrity endorsers. She tried not to let the whispers of doubt cloud her thoughts. She was ready. She belonged here. She had the skills, the experience, and the passion to bring something new to Seraphix. The assistant opened the door to the boardroom, and Lena stepped in, greeted by the cool, clinical gaze of Miranda Wexley, CEO of Seraphix Beauty Corp. Miranda sat at the head of the table, her face framed by a perfect halo of blonde hair, her tailored suit crisp and immaculate. Her smile was warm but distant, like she had perfected the art of kindness without feeling it. "Miss Thorne," Miranda said, her voice smooth and rehearsed. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Thank you for having me," Lena replied, her voice steady despite the nerves gnawing at her. She sat down across from Miranda, adjusting herself in the chair, positioning her hands neatly on the table. She couldn't help but notice how Miranda's eyes briefly lingered on her natural curls. A flicker of something cold passed over Miranda's face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "You've done quite well for yourself," she said, her tone polite but sharp. "Impressive resume, Lena. Tell me about your experience with brand development." Lena smiled, launching into the story of her last role, leading a team that developed an innovative beauty tech startup aimed at empowering Black women to embrace their natural beauty. She was passionate, articulate, her voice filled with the same drive that had pushed her to succeed. But as she spoke, she felt a shift. The tension was subtle at first, the slight narrowing of Miranda's eyes, the way her posture stiffened just a bit. And then, Miranda's gaze dropped to Lena's hair again, her lips curving into a polite but careful smile. "I have to ask," Miranda said, her tone suddenly colder. "Do you think that hairstyle is professional in our environment?" The question hung in the air like a weight, suffocating the space between them. Lena froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. She didn't want to believe what she was hearing, but she knew. She'd seen this before. The coded message, wrapped in concern, but unmistakable in its judgment. Lena took a deep breath, the weight of the question pressing down on her. "My hair's an expression of who I am," she said, keeping her voice steady. "It's a part of my identity, and I've found it empowers me." Miranda didn't respond immediately, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "I see," she said slowly. "Well, as you know, our brand image is everything. Our clients expect a certain standard, a certain professionalism. We wouldn't want to risk making them uncomfortable." Lena felt the sting of the words, but she didn't let them show. "I understand," she said softly, though her heart was racing. She had worked so hard to build this image of herself, and here it was, being rejected because of something so inherently hers. Her hair was a symbol of strength, of defiance. But in this room, it seemed like her strength was a threat. Miranda shifted in her chair, glancing at the papers in front of her. "I've also noticed some discrepancies on your LinkedIn profile," she said, pulling up her phone. "You've been linked to some online behavior that raises concerns." Lena's stomach dropped. The accusation was vague, the reference to a LinkedIn comment completely out of context. It was an old post, conversation she had participated in, where she had spoken out about the treatment of black women in the corporate world. She knew exactly what Miranda was alluding to, but she couldn't disprove it in the moment. Miranda's tone had shifted from cold to clinical. "I assure you those comments were taken out of context," Lena said, but her voice felt smaller now, more defensive. Miranda didn't respond. Instead, she smiled, a polite, empty expression. "I'm afraid you're just not quite the right fit for our culture. Thank you for your time, Miss Thorne." The words hit Lena like a slap. She had been so sure, so certain. Her heart twisted in her chest. She rose to her feet, gathering her things, her mind a blur. She didn't say anything more. What could she say? The rejection wasn't about her qualifications. It wasn't about her work ethic. It was about who she was. As she turned to leave, a young intern sitting by the door adjusted his phone, casually recording the moment. Lena didn't notice. Her back turned, her mind consumed by the humiliation that had already set in. Lena's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt the weight of the rejection settle deep within her, a feeling she couldn't shake off, no matter how hard she tried. The glass walls of the boardroom seemed to close in on her, the image of Miranda's cold smile still fresh in her mind. She stepped out into the hallway, not bothering to look back. "Thank you for your time." The words echoed in her mind like a mockery, as if they were meant to be polite, but only reinforced how small she had been made to feel. She walked quickly, head held high, but her legs felt heavy, as if every step was dragging her further into the abyss of failure. Outside, the world seemed unchanged. The hustle of the city continued around her, oblivious to the storm that was brewing inside her. Lena hailed a cab, trying to swallow the bile rising in her throat. The ride to her apartment was a blur of thoughts, mostly doubts. She kept replaying the interview in her mind, wishing there was something she could have done differently. Had she said something wrong? Had her hair been too much of a statement? As she walked into her apartment, she slumped against the door, her breath shaky. She needed to process everything, but the overwhelming sense of rejection clouded her thoughts. She had been so close, so sure of herself. But now, all of it, her dreams, her confidence, her worth, felt like it had crumbled to dust. She sat down at her desk, trying to distract herself by scrolling through her phone. But then a notification caught her eye. It was a new video, one from the interview. She clicked on it and her stomach twisted as she recognized the familiar face of the intern. The video had already been edited, distorted into something entirely different from the reality Lena had just experienced. Entitled "Candidate Melts Down Over Dress Code," the caption read. The video cut straight to the moment when Lena had been caught off guard by Miranda's question about her hair. The clip zoomed in on her expression as she answered, making her seem defensive, even angry. It was framed as if she had blown up, over something trivial, over something as simple as hair. The comments beneath the video were a cesspool of judgment. Who does she think she is? That hair doesn't belong in a professional setting. Look at her attitude. She's not even trying to fit in. Maybe if she didn't look like that, she'd get the job. Lena's heart sank as the cruel words blurred together on the screen. The comments stung more than she had imagined. She could feel the heat of shame creeping up her neck. It was as if the entire world was watching, and they had already made their judgment about who she was, based solely on her hair. She scrolled further, hoping to find a shred of compassion, but the hate kept coming. Her phone buzzed with notifications, Messages from old colleagues, former contacts, all distant now. Job offers had stopped. HR emails were no longer arriving in her inbox. Her phone rang once, but she didn't recognize the number. She let go to voicemail. She didn't need to hear another apology for not being able to move forward with her application. Lena leaned back in her chair, her face in her hands, and the tears came without warning. It wasn't just the job. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the world telling her again and again that who she was, who she had always been, wasn't enough. Her natural hair, a symbol of pride and identity, had been twisted into something ugly. And now the world was watching, pointing, laughing, dismissing her as unworthy. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification, another comment. She picked it up, her fingers numb as she scrolled through the hateful words. But this time, something was different. Among the thousands of insults, one comment stood out. Simple, anonymous and quiet against the storm. She did this to me too. I kept the proof. She'll fall soon. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She read it again, her fingers trembling. This time she felt a flicker of something, hope, maybe, or recognition. It was a small thing, a whisper among the noise, but it was something. Someone else knew. Someone else had been there too. She didn't know who had written it, but the words carried a promise, a hint of justice perhaps. Her mind raced. The pieces were starting to come together. If Miranda had done this to someone else, if she had caused pain like this before, there was a chance, just a chance, that Lena wasn't alone in this fight. Lena wiped away her tears and stared at the screen. The words from the anonymous comment etched into her mind. The path ahead wasn't clear, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going to let this stand. She had been knocked down, humiliated, but she wasn't going to stay there. Not this time. Lena spent the next few days in a haze, replaying every moment, every word, every nuance of the interview. She knew she had done nothing wrong, but it didn't matter. The world had already decided for her. Her phone had stopped ringing, her inbox remained silent, and everywhere she looked, her name was associated with the viral video, the angry black woman who couldn't accept rejection. At night, she stared at her reflection in the mirror, her natural curls a stark contrast to the corporate world she had once dreamed of fitting into. It was no longer just about the job. It was about proving that who she wasn't something to be erased, something to be ashamed of. She had worked so hard to build her career, to push through every challenge, only to be cast aside because of her identity. But Lena had never been one to stay down for long. One evening, after scrolling endlessly through job boards that only led to more dead ends, Lena made a decision. She was going to do what no one else thought she could do, build her own future, on her own terms. She grabbed her laptop and opened a new document. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, unsure where to begin. But then the idea came to her. Her passion for tech, her understanding of the beauty industry, and her own experiences as a black woman navigating these spaces, they could all come together to create something meaningful. Lena had the skills, the knowledge, and now the drive. She began to sketch out ideas for a platform, a beauty tech startup for black women, focused on hair care and identity, something that could offer the world a more inclusive approach, a space where black women could find empowerment through technology. It was something that had been missing, something that could give voice to the very people who were too often left out of the conversation. And so, TrueKrown was born. But Lena knew she couldn't do it alone. The road ahead would be tough, and she would need allies, people who understood the weight of her vision, people who believed in her. She reached out to old contacts, former colleagues, anyone she could think of who might help her bring this dream to life. The responses were slow at first, most of them offering empty words of encouragement but no real support. Then, a message popped up in her inbox, a name she hadn't expected to see. Jade, a former chemist at Seraphix who had been fired unjustly for speaking up about the company's unfair practices. Lena, the message read, I've been following what happened. I know what it feels like to be pushed out for standing up for what's right. I believe in what you're doing with TrueKrown, let's talk. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She remembered Jade from her time at Seraphix. Smart, driven, and a woman who had never backed down from a fight. They'd spoken before, but after Jade's dismissal from Seraphix, their paths had diverged. Now it seemed their journeys were intersecting again. They met in person at a small cafe, the kind of place where the noise of the city seemed to fall away, leaving space for deeper conversations. Lena explained her vision for TrueKrown, her desire to create an AI-powered platform that would offer personalized hair care solutions for Black women, while also celebrating their natural beauty. Jade listened intently, nodding as Lena spoke. "I'm in," Jade said simply after a long pause. "I've been wanting to do something that helps people like us for a while. I can bring in the research, the formulations, and the connections. I have. Let's make this happen." It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Lena could feel the weight of the world lifting off her shoulders piece by piece. TrueKrown was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a reality. However, as the days passed, Lena began to notice cracks in her foundation. A voice from her past, someone she had once trusted implicitly, started to drift back into her life. Trinity, her former best friend. Trinity had always been supportive, always stood by Lena through thick and thin. But things had changed. They hadn't spoken much since the Seraphix incident, and now Trinity was asking questions. She wanted to know more about TrueKrown, about Lena's plans, and about what had gone wrong with Seraphix. At first, Lena was hesitant. She didn't want to bring Trinity into the mess of her new project. Too many things were still uncertain. But Trinity was insistent, and Lena reluctantly agreed to share some of the early data and research with her. After all, Trinity had been a part of the journey before, and Lena felt she could trust her. What Lena didn't know was that deep down, Trinity was grappling with her own jealousy, her own insecurities. And as the weeks went by, Lena began to notice something odd. She started hearing rumors from others in the industry, whispers about how Miranda Wexley, the CEO of Seraphix, had suddenly taken an interest in a similar project to TrueKrown. Lena's heart sank as she realized the truth. Trinity had leaked some of TrueKrown's early data to Miranda, hoping to secure favor with the very woman who had dismissed Lena. As the tension mounted, Lena found herself facing yet another betrayal. But this time, she was ready. She was no longer the scared woman who had walked out of that interview room in defeat. Lena was stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. And she would fight, no matter the odds. Knew her struggles, her dreams, and the painful rejection that had come from Seraphix. But now everything was crumbling, and Lena was left to pick up the pieces alone. She sat at her kitchen table staring at her phone, feeling the weight of every word. Miranda was interested in a project just like hers, one that mirrored the very essence of what TrueKrown was all about. But it wasn't just a coincidence. No, it was more than that. Pieces were falling into place. Trinity had given her the data, and Miranda had seized it, just as she had done with countless other people of color in the past, exploiting their ideas while never once acknowledging the source. The next day, Lena set up a meeting with Jade. She needed answers. She needed to know if they could move forward despite the betrayal. "I don't know what's worse," Lena said, pacing the small office they'd rented. "That Miranda's playing us like pawns, or that Trinity knew exactly how to stab me in the back." Jade looked at her, her eyes sharp with understanding. "She's trying to steal your dream, Lena, but you're not going to let her. We've got the data, the research, hell, we've got the vision. She can't take that from us, not unless we let her." Lena nodded, but a small seed of doubt remained. The road ahead was going to be even harder than she had imagined, but there was no turning back now. In the days that followed, Lena and Jade began working relentlessly to refine TrueKrown, ensuring that every aspect of their platform was uniquely theirs, something Miranda could never replicate. They focused on the personalization aspect of the platform, using AI to tailor hair care solutions for every individual, while also celebrating Black beauty in a way that no major company ever had. But as they built, rumors continued to spread. The industry was buzzing about a new competitor, an exclusive platform that had the same mission, but was backed by Seraphix's vast resources. Despite the leaks, the whispers, and the odds stacked against her, Lena refused to be silenced. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, a familiar face appeared in her inbox. Maya Storm, a beauty influencer with millions of followers, had reached out. "I've been following what's happening," Maya wrote. "I see what Seraphix is trying to do. But I think what you're doing with TrueKrown is real. I want to support it. Let's get you out there." Lena's heart raced as she read the message. Maya was a game changer. If Maya backed her platform, it could send shockwaves through the industry, exposing the hypocrisy of the major beauty corporations and their exploitative practices. This was the breakthrough Lena needed, the moment she could turn everything around. Within a week, Maya posted a video endorsing TrueKrown, the platform's mission, Lena's journey, and the importance of supporting Black-owned beauty tech. The video went viral, and within hours, messages of support flooded in from all corners of the internet. People were angry at the injustice, at how Black innovators like Lena had been systematically pushed aside by the industry. But they were also ready for change. Miranda, who had been silent until now, could no longer ignore the wave of backlash that was building. Investors began pulling out of Seraphix, unwilling to be associated with a company that had been exposed for its racially discriminatory practices. The pressure was mounting, and for the first time in years, Miranda began to feel the heat of accountability. But Lena wasn't finished yet. She knew that as long as Seraphix existed, it would continue to be a threat to everything she was building. She couldn't just sit back and hope things would change. It was time to take action. Lena reached out to a private equity group, one that had a history of supporting Black entrepreneurs and businesses rooted in social justice. Within weeks, they had reached an agreement, and Lena found herself in possession of the majority shares of Seraphix. It was a move that would send shockwaves through the corporate world. But for Lena, it wasn't just about business. It was about reclaiming power and dismantling the systems that had kept her and others like her out for far too long. As she walked into the gleaming Seraphix headquarters, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. She had fought for this. She had earned this, and now she was going to take it all back. Legal war. Miranda sues Lena for IP theft, claims TrueKrown was built using Seraphix trade secrets. Lena sat in the dimly lit office, a stark contrast to the bright, modernized Seraphix headquarters. She now owned the majority of. The papers in front of her were official, too official. Miranda Wexley was suing her. The claims were laughable on the surface, intellectual property theft. She had supposedly stolen Seraphix's trade secrets, specifically the formula for their so-called next-gen haircare tech. But Lena knew it wasn't about the tech. It was about power, about Miranda trying to hold on to the control she had lost when Lena exposed the truth. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Jade stepped inside, her face a mask of concern. "Lena, we need to talk," Jade said, sitting across from her. "I've seen the papers. This isn't just a corporate battle. Miranda's out for blood. She's not going to stop until she's buried you in legal fees and public backlash." Lena clenched her fists. "She can't do this. I didn't steal from her. Everything I built, TrueKrown, is my own. I had nothing to do with Seraphix's formula." "I know," Jade replied, "but the world doesn't know that. She's got the resources to spin this however she wants, and you're a target. You know that." Lena leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. "I'm not going down without a fight. I'm not giving her the satisfaction." Courtroom shock. A hidden NDA surfaces. Miranda had previously stolen a formula from Jade, who kept evidence. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. The air was thick with the hum of reporters, lawyers, and spectators, all waiting for the drama to unfold. Lena's legal team was prepared, but Miranda's lawyers were ruthless. The tension was palpable, and Lena's heart raced as she took her seat, her eyes never leaving Miranda. As the trial continued, it became clear that Miranda's accusations were falling apart. Her lawyers had presented their case, all but accusing Lena of stealing Seraphix's tech. But just as the tide seemed to be turning in Miranda's favor, Jade stood up to testify. "I have something that might change everything," Jade said, holding up a sealed envelope. She passed it to the judge, who opened it carefully. Inside was an old NDA, a non-disclosure agreement that had been signed years before. "What is this?" the judge asked, his voice sharp. "It's a copy of the agreement Miranda made with me when I worked at Seraphix," Jade replied, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "But it contains something that no one knew. Miranda stole a formula from me. A formula that she then passed off as Seraphix's next big product. I've kept the evidence all this time." The courtroom went silent. Every eye turned to Miranda, whose face drained of color as she realized the trap that had been set. The papers Jade had provided contained a detailed blueprint of a formula that Seraphix had marketed as their own breakthrough, despite it having been stolen from a black chemist. Lena could hardly believe what was happening. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The truth was finally coming to light, but even so, it wasn't over. Not yet. Rock bottom for Lena. Despite the truth, the court sides with Seraphix temporarily. Lena faces bankruptcy. The judge's gavel fell with an almost deafening echo. "I regret to inform you," the judge said, his voice cold, "but this case will be temporarily ruled in favor of Seraphix. Until further evidence can be reviewed, Lena Thorne's company is required to cease operations. All assets are frozen pending investigation." Lena's world came crashing down around her. The courtroom seemed to spin, and she could hear her heart pounding in her ears. Despite the damning evidence, despite Miranda's history of theft and manipulation, the court had sided with the corporation. Seraphix was too powerful. They had the money, the influence, and the connections to keep the case in their favor for as long as it took. Lena's lawyer turned to her, his face drawn. "We're not out of options, Lena, but this will take time. You need to prepare for the long haul." "I'm not going anywhere," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper, but inside her confidence was wavering. She had fought so hard to get here, to build something real. And now everything was at risk. Jaw-dropping twist. The intern who filmed Lena falsely leaks the unedited footage of the interview, revealing Miranda's racism, just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse. An unexpected turn of events hit the media. An anonymous leak surfaced online. Unedited footage of Lena's interview at Seraphix. The video had been taken by the intern who had secretly recorded the interaction, and this time, there was no filter. The world saw it all. The way Miranda had criticized Lena's natural hair, the subtle sneers, the racial undertones. The video spread like wildfire, and within hours it was everywhere. As news outlets picked it up, social media exploded. Miranda's true nature was exposed. The way she had manipulated Lena's interview, turning her into the angry black woman trope, was now inescapable. The comments flooded in, filled with outrage and disbelief. People were furious. The hashtag Justice for Lena trended for days, and for the first time since the trial began, Miranda's power began to slip. Lena sat back, watching the flood of messages on her phone. She had been dragged through the mud, humiliated, her reputation ruined. But now the truth was out. The world saw her as she truly was, not the angry woman Miranda had painted her to be, but a woman who had been wronged. A woman who had been forced to fight for everything she had earned, and Miranda was no longer untouchable. Public eruption. Miranda is canceled overnight. Sponsors flee. Seraphix stock crashes. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. Sponsors began pulling out of Seraphix. Beauty influencers who had once supported Miranda's brand now denounced her, citing the unethical treatment of Lena and the racism that had been exposed. The pressure was mounting, and it wasn't long before Seraphix's stock began to plummet. Lena watched, a quiet satisfaction bubbling inside her. She had spent so long fighting for recognition, for justice, for her space in an industry that had always turned its back on her. But now it was all coming together. The truth had set the stage for her to reclaim her power. Seraphix was on the verge of collapse, and Lena was just getting started. Creating stories like this takes a lot of time, effort, and heart. Each word, each moment is carefully crafted to resonate with you, to spark emotion and reflection. If you've enjoyed this journey, it would mean the world to us if you could like, comment, and share. Your support helps us keep telling these important stories and continue creating meaningful content. And, if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe so we can stay connected. Every like and share is a reminder that we're building something special together, and for that, we're truly grateful.